So I've been following the development of this Chinese Souls-like game, Black Myth Wukong, for a few years. I mean, the graphics look very advanced, creating a significant amount of hype. And, I'm a big Souls fan, so of course I was interested. But, the game's just dropped, and I'm currently reading the Screen Rant review here. They gave it a 3 out of 5, praising the game's graphics and fluid combat, but also criticizing the lack of inclusivity and diversity in the game. And that's a sentiment that I'm seeing echoed throughout the Western gaming journalist sphere. They all seem to be very annoyed by this game's existence, by the devs, by the defiant stance taken by this Chinese studio. They're saying that no, they actually don't care about the Western gaming industrial culture of DEI and wokeism and all of the crap that comes with it. And in fact, the team issued their own request, asking Western game journalists, can you please lay off with the feminist critique, the anti-Chinese propaganda, the severe neo-Marxist critical theory and sabotage thinly disguised as a video game review? Can you just not do that and just review the game based on its actual merit, That strikes me as quite naive. It's that China really is insulated to a certain degree from the Western anti-culture and its various institutional tentacles. The fact is, Chinese video game journalism, one would assume, is not some kind of thinly veiled Bolshevik attempt at destroying the very industry it's supposed to be representing. When it comes to exporting their culture around the world, the Chinese seem to be far more concerned in their entertainment with reinforcing a positive depiction of China and Chinese culture, in a way countering a lot of the anti-Chinese propaganda that we, of course, are subject to as citizens of the West. Our governments are engaged in a form of propaganda war in this multipolar world with China and its allies, So it's interesting to observe culturally the rise of China in this current era, not only as a legitimate challenger to American global hegemony, but also as a nation capable of producing real culture of value that people throughout the world would be interested in engaging with. And it seems like with Black Myth Wukong, we are finally at the stage where China's video game industry represents a real alternative to the status quo of Western gaming, in a similar way to South Korea and Japan, although again, Japan have had a lot of their own issues with this corporate-backed push for DEI recently. Production houses like Capcom and Square Enix come to mind. They've been lobbying willingly for a piece of that BlackRock, ideologically driven investment pie. The same money that, of course, has reshaped and, in my opinion, decimated the Western video game industry. So it's no surprise that a lot of gamers here in the West are very interested in Black Myth Wukong, myself included. Because really, it's not just their video game industry, but modern China is a very different beast from the contemporary Amerocentric liberal Western world. It's a completely different universe. They are not willing to take on these neo-Marxist critiques of their culture because, of course, they can see, based on their own fairly recent history, that these ideas do nothing but destroy. And in fact, it was the period of Maoist Chinese communism during the Cultural Revolution that led to the absolute annihilation of a lot of Chinese history and culture. It was simply destroyed in favor of this utopian Marxist crap that has led to more deaths than any other ideology that's ever existed. We're talking over 100 million people dead. So, there's really something quite bizarre about the situation that we're in here, where you have Western woke devs and journos in our industry lecturing the Chinese and saying, you guys need to do better. You need to be more politically correct. No, they don't. How does that even make sense? It's like that the Chinese, when creating this game based on their own history and their ancient mythology, they need what? Black people? Like, how does that even make sense? What is the complaint? It's like, oh, there's not enough women in the game, and there's not enough diversity. That's what the review was saying, a lack of diversity. And it's like, what? I see a monkey over here, there's a toad man over here. There's like a wolf guy over here, there's a giant anthropomorphic bear over here. Clearly, there's a lot of furry diversity on display. This game's like a furry's wet dream. But apparently that's not good enough for Western video game journalists. They're very angry because, of course, the Wukong devs told them to go fuck themselves, which is absolutely the correct way to deal with, these disgusting communist journalists. And let me translate for you what they're really talking about when they complain about a lack of diversity in women and feminism in a Chinese fucking video game. They're angry that the game might actually appeal to the straight white male gamer, who they hate more than anything. Just the mere idea, the mere suggestion that the white chud cell gamer might actually enjoy playing this Chinese monkey game. It really gets under their skin because their purpose is to destroy gaming for no other reason than that we enjoy it. Fundamentally, wokeism is anti-white. That is the crux of the ideology. And because the Chinese don't get this, they will be punished by our journalists, our industry. The modern woke culture of Western gaming rejects black myth Wukong simply for vying for neutrality in this vile Marxist culture war. And these journos, man, the discourse surrounding this game is just fucking absurd. China has suffered more than maybe any other nation except for Russia under the fucking illegitimate regime of hardcore leftist communism. It's disgusting watching these woke journalists on their high horse here, because at the end of the day, in modern China, nationalism is not a dirty word, unlike here in the West. And in fact, a lot of the entire purpose of post-World War II Nuremberg regime liberalism is to prevent any expressions of nationalism from emerging in any form, both culturally or politically. The fact is, American neoliberalism and this Bolshevik tumor of wokeism suffocating us at the moment is the direct antithesis of nationalism. And that's the thing, even though some people still perceive China as a communist state, in reality they have moved on largely from this dark Maoist chapter and come to embrace a form of National Socialism. I mean, they retain some of the optics of communism, some of the iconography, the imagery. But for me, it's hard for me to perceive a work like Black Myth Wukong as anything other than an expression of Chinese nationalism. Everybody knows that Western video games and entertainment and everything, our culture, sucks ass. Everybody knows this. Around the world, they look in on us from the outside, shaking their heads. The Chinese have a word for us. They call Western liberal whites baizuo, because baizuo are fucking retarded. And everybody knows it, except apparently us. Our video game journalists are activists. They absolutely hate the idea that a video game would be produced for reasons other than an expression of Marxist praxis, to produce a piece of entertainment for the sake of entertainment. And not only that, but to include unapologetically elements of your own culture and nationalism within the game, the visuals, the plot itself. Sun Wukong, Journey to the West. This is, of course, a beloved, legendary, ancient work of Chinese traditional culture, a culture that itself was almost erased by Marxism, the very leftist theory that is worshipped by the journalists giving these devs a hard time. And of course, Western gamers would prefer to play a lovingly crafted work of Chinese nationalism, free from DEI, free from some kind of gay anti-white subtext, created with passion, made by a team of people hired presumably for their actual talent and merit, than the usual slop that our pathetic industry continues to offer up to us. It's just going to keep on going. There is no sign of a paradigm shift. What I'm saying is it's Jover for Western video games, but it's okay because, the Western gamer, we will look eastward for our entertainment. Me personally, not only am I definitely sold on the monkey game, but the way I'm coping as a cursed resident of the UK right now is I am trans-Japanese. I've decided to transition into a Japanese man, which I think is completely legitimate under the values of our current modern period. I think it's completely reasonable. Why couldn't I be a Japanese man? You're going to refer to me as Japanese. My name is Tolpachi Gonzaimon. And, I cook Japanese food now. I can make katsudon, gyoza, I can make sushi, gyudon, chicken karage, of course. My favorite video game is Shin Megami Tensei Devil Summoner 2, Raidu Kuzunoa vs. King Abaddon. And I'm watching a lot of anime. I just finished watching every episode of Baki. Highly nationalistic to the point where, Baki's father, the strongest creature on the planet, is so powerful that US presidents have to sign peace treaties with him. The single individual, Yujiro Hanma, he's so powerful. He has George W. Bush and Obama and even Trump himself taking a knee, bowing down to the ogre, the ultimate expression of masculinity. This is the kind of Japanese fucking autism contained within this anime and manga, and I'm here for it, Like, canonically, even the atomic bomb can't kill Yujiro Hanma. It's great. I love that about Japanese culture, their ethno-nationalism, their preference for their own people, their own culture. It's healthy. You see that on display in a lot of works that the Japanese have produced. In video games, one game that I've just finished revisiting is Sekiro, right? The From Software masterpiece, which, similar to Black Myth Wukong, is an expression of nationalism. Sekiro is filled with such potent imagery, such reverence and love for Japanese culture. You can't even imagine a developer in the West engaging in the same type of production and holding that kind of reverence for Western culture. Imagine a Western dev creating a work like fucking Wukong or Sekiro. It's almost unfathomable. It would be considered a work of hate. And if there's anything that gamers should take away from this Black Myth Wukong situation, it's that now we are the outsiders looking in at an ascendant, cutting-edge video game industry that is functioning as intended. So much so that it appears in a rather stunning turn of events that the Chinese industrial markets are less controlled and freer than its Western equivalent counterparts. The fact is, the Italian communist Antonio Gramsci wrote extensively in the 20th century about this conundrum that Marxism had failed to take root in the US because Americans just love to own things a little bit too much, right? So they're hard to radicalize using the standard communist dialectic. So what do? You radicalize their industries. And then the ideologically captured industries produce products, and it's the products themselves that will politically radicalize Americans. And that does seem to be what's been going on over the last however many years. Not just in the US, but across the entire quote-unquote free world. When Western devs decide to create a video game inspired by Western culture, they always have to include a negative spin. In BioShock, the American rugged individualist and libertarian is a fucking despot. In Assassin's Creed 3, you play as a Native American, oppressed under colonialism. The new God of War games are fucking gay and they have black Norse gods. And of course, Red Dead Redemption 2, you play as a homosexual feminist cowboy. The list goes on, but imagine a game that was just unapologetically a work of British nationalism. Because, I always used to be a fan of the British developers like Rare, Chris Roberts, Molyneux, etc., etc. But, GoldenEye is kind of a work of British nationalism. 007, the ultimate Chad, especially in his Pierce Brosnan incarnation, he's pwning communists for king and country. I think that's pretty fucking cool. But, for me, I think we can do better. I think that we need a video game where you play as an agent of the British Empire. This is set at the height of the British Empire. This game doesn't exist, by the way. This is just a Ptolemaic fantasy I'm sharing with you, okay? But it's a Souls-like, of course. And, this British ship, this naval vessel, runs aground upon the shores of this seemingly uninhabited, imposing tropical isle. And the main character, like a 6'5", blonde-haired, blue-eyed specimen of Anglo-Saxon chattery, is tasked to explore this island, encountering hideous natives who are sacrificing human beings and engaging in vile pagan rituals and cannibalism, and it's up to the civilized Christian protagonist to carve his way through the savagery, rescuing a kidnapped female of some kind. I don't have the details, she could be like the Duke's daughter who was on board. He's going to save her, and he's going to claim this territory in the name of the British Crown and Pax Britannica. Does the game contain diversity? Well, do you count the fact that all of the enemies are like Resident Evil 5, bug-eyed, extremely unflattering caricatures of a primitive Afro-Caribbean island society? Well, that's just the way it goes. They're going to have like bone necklaces. This is just going to be considered the most hateful imagery by today's standards, but, sorry, not sorry. And you as the main character, you'll have access to swordplay. You'll have like a British cutlass that you can kind of, you can use some fast attacks, but you can also use your sidearm, your musket, your blunderbuss. You'll have ranged options too. In this ultra-violent third-person Souls-like, where really it's about the tenacity of the British man. The Faustian spirit will carry us through this horrific ordeal. And not only that, but our faith, our belief in Christ, to the point where every time you save the game at like a bonfire, which is just like a regular campfire, the main character takes out a crucifix and silently prays, little details like that. If we had a free culture here in the West, there'd be no reason why we couldn't have a game like this that glorifies our civilization in some small way. How many white people have we murdered virtually in video games? And not just like generic white people, but, racist, white trash Americans. Look at Far Cry 5. The entire game, you're gunning down what appear to be white American separatists, i.e. unflattering caricatures of white middle Americans, And in fact, the French studio that developed Far Cry 5, a lot of them actually went to Montana for research, just for the visuals. And they had such a lovely time. They were treated so well by the locals, and they enjoyed that agricultural, rural American culture so much that the end product was declared not anti-white enough by video game journalists. The setting is just peak comfy. You play that game and you find yourself sympathizing with the cult, who are like, of course, these doomsday fundamentalist preppers, kind of like a David Koresh Waco situation, where by the end of the game, the antagonist Joseph Seed's doomsday prophecy ends up coming true, basically validating his actions up to that point. He was right. Joseph Seed was right.